Vincent is a hunter that lives deep in the mountains. One night, he hears a crying baby. He suspects that a robber might have snuck in, so he searches around his house while holding onto an axe. After looking around, he couldn't find anyone. Vincent begins to wonder if he's hearing things because he's been having similar experiences ever since he learned that he can't have a child. Suddenly, he finds a baby. He grabs the baby and puts his ear against the baby's chest. Vincent can hear the baby's heart beating, and this makes him ecstatic. His wife, Olina, approaches him and asks him why he was making so much noise. She is shocked to see that her husband is holding onto a baby. They decide to raise the baby as their own and they name him Chiron. Eventually, Chiron turns 12. He starts reading a lot of magical books. He has a good relationship with his father and he asks his father about magic. However, Vincent knows nothing about magic. The local kids see them walking together. They comment on Chiron's strange behavior. Like a typical nerd, he reads every day but never plays with them. Vincent overhears the local kids talking about his son. This offends Vincent, but he just leaves them alone. He thinks he's lacking as a father, but he really loves his son. Later, they head to the city of Craze. There, Vincent leaves Chiron with Martin's grandpa while he leaves for business. Before leaving, he reminds his son to stay away from alleys and nobles. While in the old man's care, Chiron helps him out with his store. The old man thinks that Chiron is a smart child. Chiron asks him about magic. The old man confesses that he knows nothing about it. But he points Chiron to a bookstore that has a lot of books about magic. Chiron rushes to the bookstore while the old man is left with the book that the child was always reading. He opens the books thinking it's just a fairy tale book. But he is shocked to discover that the book is about actual magic. Meanwhile, at the bookstore, the shopkeeper doesn't want Chiron to touch any of the books. The shopkeeper states that the book is not for peasants and that his hands are too dirty to touch the expensive books. Suddenly, a customer arrives and the shopkeeper entertains him. While she is distracted, Chiron schemes through the books and notes that they are not worth reading. He leaves the bookstore disappointed. Just then, he sees a man carrying a box full of books. He follows him around only to discover that the man would dump the books in an alley. Chiron picks up one of the books and realizes how his poor dad got the book that he was reading. He sees some nobles and remembers what his father said about them. Regardless, Chiron approaches them as he thinks about how he is any different from the nobles. Suddenly, a guard stops him because he was about to enter an area that only nobles can access. The guard asks Chiron where his parents are and he replies that his father is nearby. Upon hearing this, Chiron dashes away and hides. He was able to escape his pursuers. Thereafter, he comes out of hiding and sees his shoe on the floor. It came off while he was running away, so he puts it back on. Just then, he overhears a headmaster teaching his students about magic. Chiron thinks that he may have stumbled upon a magic academy. He pushes his ear against the wall and continues to eavesdrop as the headmaster asks his students about the most important talent when it comes to magic. Later, Chiron learns that the answer is insight. The headmaster explains that insight is the ability to understand something without any concrete evidence or proof. It's a law that has always existed in the world. Magic is of a similar nature. Hence, one needs insight to feel and accept it. He adds that insight can make someone a genius mage. Chiron then ponders about whether he will ever become a mage. When suddenly, the headmaster calls out to him and asks him about his thoughts. Dumbfounded, Chiron thinks about whether he should run or answer. But at that moment, Chiron thinks that if he doesn't climb the wall, he will regret it forever. So he scales the wall and sees an old instructor sitting with his young students. Upon seeing him, the headmaster, Myra Alpheus, asks him whether he would like to join them. Chiron walks over to them. The other students didn't want him to join the class because he's a commoner, but Alpheus still wants him to join them. He asks Chiron what got him interested. Chiron replies that he wants to see some magic. He shares that he has read books but has never seen magic before. The students call him a liar. In response, the headmaster shows them wind magic. Out of nowhere, a gust of wind sends the kids flying in the air. Thereafter, they start to fall. Chiron panics as he falls since he could die if he hits the ground. He closes his eyes and anticipates the impact. But just as he was about to hit the ground, he hears the students laughing at him. He opens his eyes and realizes that he is now hovering a few inches above the ground. The headmaster tells him that it was magic. Chiron asks Alpheus about magic. He exclaims that he wants to know the truth even if he can't understand it. The class was shocked and the students think he's being rude. In response, Alpheus states that magic is a mental operation that explores the truth of reality. Chiron then interrupts the headmaster and says that the reality is irrational but it's actually closer to the truth. The class is surprised to hear this from a commoner. Alpheus then asks him if he read that from the book. To which Chiron replies that he just saw similarities between the books. He thinks that maybe the truth is actually hidden inside irrationality. The headmaster is impressed while his students are confused. Chiron asks him what he needs to do to learn magic. Alpheus thinks that the Chiron is brilliant and he can feel the boy's passion for magic. But, unfortunately, he is a commoner. The headmaster instructs his student, Shuamin, to enter the spirit zone and she complies. After entering the spirit zone, the headmaster asks her how many coins he's holding in his hand. Shuamin answers correctly. Alpheus explains that the mage who enters the zone becomes supernaturally aware of the outside world and is able to dominate reality. The headmaster tells Chiron how to enter the spirit zone and asks him to try it on the spot. This will determine whether the boy has the potential to learn magic. Chiron thinks about erasing everything other than his sensitive mind. He then opens his eyes and tells the class that he just heard sounds. The students laugh at him as they think that he has failed. Alpheus pats him on the head and tells him to keep practicing so that he'll be able to do it. After that, the headmaster leaves with his students. As he walks away, Alpheus thinks that Chiron actually has potential but it is wasted since he was not born as a noble. Chiron scales the wall to leave the premises. He thinks that it really worked. It turns out that Chiron actually entered the zone. During that time, he felt like he was the world itself. He runs around and cries as he thinks about how beautiful it felt. For an instant, he felt as though he was able to leave his body and become infinite. While running, he bumps into a group of thugs. They demand money from him as they ask him if he's from the wolf gang. Just then, a noble named Amy arrives at the scene. One of the thugs claims that the boy had bad intentions so he was being treated that way. Chiron exclaims that it is not true. Upon hearing that, a thug kicks Chiron and he falls on his knees. They begin hurling insults at him as they kick him mercilessly. Thankfully, Amy tells them to stop. She approaches Chiron and asks him if he's okay. He cries and tells her that he did not do anything. Upon hearing that, Amy asks the thugs if they can think of anything more fun to do. They come up with suggestions but Amy decides to check if he's fit to become a slave. The thugs then tell him to remove his clothes. Suddenly, he starts seeing a different world. He remembers how Alpheus used a spell to create wind. Amy notices that something is off so he tells the goons to stop. Thereafter, Chiron summons a powerful gust of wind that sends his attackers flying. They later fall on the ground from a considerable height thereby causing injuries. Enraged, Amy approaches Chiron and asks him where he learned magic when suddenly, some people arrive at the scene. She jumps away. The people see the thugs that were knocked out and Chiron runs away. Meanwhile, in the house of Karmas, Amy arrives home and her father, Shakora, asks her if she skipped class again. Amy just replies that she has already learned everything. After that, she tells her father to introduce her to someone who works in a magic academy. We then see Vincent and Alina in their house. They are looking for Chiron who went outside to chop wood. Vincent starts searching for his son. He remembers when he almost lost Chiron in the city of Craze. Vincent has no idea what happened that day. Later, we see Chiron holding onto an axe. He thinks about the wind magic he used against the thugs. Chiron was never able to use that magic again. However, he now has the ability to enter the spirit zone. He enters the spirit zone and sees something glowing on the tree. He swings his axe towards it and the tree falls down in one strike. Chiron calls it magic. Nearby, we see Vincent hiding from his son. He saw what happened and he couldn't believe his eyes. This is the first time Chiron was able to make a tree fall with one strike. He then proceeds to cut the tree with a handsaw. After that, Chiron keeps on repeating the process hoping to learn more about magic. 3 years later, we see Chiron in the woods. He has mastered the skill. He feels like he has already become one with nature. Chiron heads back home and sees a royal carriage. He enters his house and sees his parents sitting with an assistant butler from the house of Ogent. His name is Temurin and he greets Chiron. Chiron introduces himself to Temurin and the butler replies that he came for Chiron. Temurin takes a close look at Chiron's face and asks him if he can read. Chiron replies that he can. Thereafter, Temurin asks him if he is willing to work for the House of Ogent. He is going to be sorting books in the house's great library for 2 years. This excites Chiron as he knows that the House of Ogent has books about magic. However, Temurin warns that Chiron's family will be hunted down if a book is leaked. Temurin adds that he will give their family a lot of money because their lives are on the line. Vincent exclaims that they didn't listen to the demands because of the money. He just wants Chiron to accomplish his dreams by reading books. Temurin then asks Vincent if he's been lying to his son. In a flashback, we see a 6-year-old Chiron reading books. Vincent thought that the boy is clever and that maybe he has the blood of a noble. He regrets not being able to send Chiron to school. Vincent trained Chiron how to work in the mountains. But when he saw his son working, he felt devastated because he has raised the boy as a woodsman's son. So he begged nobles to let his son work for them while letting him read books. Back to the present, Vincent was offended by Temurin's question. He shouts at Temurin to leave his house. Temurin is about to leave but Chiron tells his father that he's going to accept the job. The butler tells him that he will return to pick him up in a week and that once he enters the manor, he can't leave until it's over. Chiron then thanks his father for giving him such a big gift. His father cries and he tells his son to return to him safely. 1 week later, Vincent signs a piece of paper and Chiron boards the royal carriage. Chiron starts to question whether he will survive for 2 years. While on their way, someone in the carriage explains the Ogent family's background to Chiron. They arrive at their destination and Chiron's jaw drops as he sees the great walkway. After alighting from the carriage, Chiron's companions warn him to watch his words. They take him to the place where he'll be staying. There, he sees Temurin and together they head to the great library. Temurin explains that Chiron's task is to organize the books in the new library. He adds that Chiron can't go outside or enter the manor without special permission. After that, Temurin proceeds to teach Chiron the butler rules. The next day, Chiron starts working. While organizing, he learns that all knowledge is connected and history is the backbone that connects it all. He secretly reads history books during his free time. Later, Temurin approaches him and tells him to take good care of his uniform and fix his hair. That evening, Chiron falls asleep while reading a history book. Temurin takes the book he was reading as he thinks about how naive Chiron is. He thinks that Chiron dreams big but he will never be successful. After 3 months, Chiron is already used to his job. He learns that nobles don't really care if the books get leaked and that commoners risk their lives for things that nobles won't even remember. Regardless, he thinks it would be best to live a quiet life. Suddenly, a man charges into the library. It's Rian Ogent, the youngest son of the Lord. He hides behind Chiron's desk and tells Chiron to keep him hidden. Thereafter, Rian's swordsman instructor arrives. He asks Chiron where Rian is hiding. Chiron points out Rian's location and the instructor drags him outside. Rian gets mad at Chiron. A few days later, we see Chiron reading books again. He has completed 82 books in 4 months. As he reads, he begins to question whether reading history books is the right choice. He realizes that scholars and mages are the same but the scholars cannot enter the spirit zone. Suddenly, Rian enters the library and shouts at him. He shares the struggles he went through after his instructor took him away. Rian states that revenge was the only thing that kept him going. He berates Chiron and grabs him by the vest. Rian is surprised to see that Chiron is still calm. Upon seeing this, he takes Chiron to the training ground. Chiron plans to just let Rian beat him up because his parents' lives are on the line. Rian gives him a wooden sword and challenges him to a duel. Rian calls Chiron a coward. Chiron asks him what he did that was cowardly. Rian replies that he sold him out to his master despite being in trouble. Chiron notices that Rian's expression has changed. Rian is ready for the duel. He gives Chiron 3 chances to strike before he starts attacking. Chiron notes that the wooden sword is sturdy and it could break his bones. If that happens, he will be sent home. He charges at Rian who easily deflects his attack. He lost his first chance and he realizes that Rian is a strong opponent. Chiron swings again but Rian just blocks his attack. Now he has only 1 chance left. Chiron then enters the spirit zone and strikes Rian's wooden sword. Rian prepares to attack when suddenly his sword shatters. The strike is so strong that even Chiron's sword breaks. Rian asks him where he learned swordsmanship. Chiron explains that he doesn't know swordsmanship. He just learned that skill from cutting down trees. Rian doesn't believe him. He's been training with the sword for 15 years. He remembers Ryojin, who is so much better than him. Rian gets furious and gives Chiron a real sword. Thereafter, he declares that they will have a match using real swords after a month. Until then, Chiron must learn swordsmanship. The next day, Chiron thinks about Rian. He remembers that unlike his brother, Rai, who is a genius swordsman, Rian has no talent whatsoever. Chiron regrets his actions. He should have just taken the hits from Rian. Now he has angered Rian and he could really die. Thinking that there's no other way around it, Chiron reads books about swordsmanship. Meanwhile, Rian continues to train under his master. He is training harder than ever. Chiron later learns that a swordsman has a schema which is the exact opposite of the spirit zone. It involves complete mastery over every cell in the body. He thinks about trying it out, but he realizes that it would be inefficient to focus on a skill that is the opposite of spirit zone. So Chiron decides to use spirit zone instead while studying swordsmanship. We see Rian once again. He fiercely attacks the dummy while his master orders him to stop. He expresses his frustration about not being able to use schema. But his master grabs his weapon and tells him to call it a day. Rian sits down with his master. The master tells his student that he has no talent, but he thinks that Rian is good at doing something, and that is hard work. The master adds that hard work is the mortal enemy of geniuses. This motivates Rian to work even harder, and he is determined to defeat Chiron.
Chiron trains with an imaginary opponent. He learns how to block and attack in 8 different directions. After a while, Chiron gets exhausted and he realizes that the realm of the sword is as infinite as magic. He heads to the duel thinking that he might not make it out of there alive. The duel begins and Rian notices that Chiron's aura is different this time. He remembers their first encounter thinking that Chiron may have defeated him without any prior training. Rian thinks that Chiron could be a genius like Rai, so he really wants to defeat him. He charges at Chiron, who just stands there staring at his blade. Rian is impressed by his courage. It seems like he doesn't fear death. Chiron struggles as he blocks Rian's first attack. Rian immediately follows up with a flurry of attacks. Chiron can't keep up with his movements, and he gets hit on the chest. He panics as he thinks that he is going to die. Chiron falls back, but Rian catches up to him. It is then revealed that Rian's style, the Ojin swordsmanship, is intended for big swords, so Chiron can't withstand his attacks. Rian strikes from the side with all his might and Chiron blocks it. Chiron finds it weird since Rian could have defeated him if he slashed upwards instead. He concludes that Rian has good skills but he lacks insight. So he adjusts his fighting style. Chiron clashes swords with Rian and launches a counterattack. Rian couldn't believe his eyes. He thought that Chiron was a goner. Chiron pushes him back with basic slashes. He struggles as Chiron focuses on maintaining the rhythm. At that moment, Rian remembers his brother Rai, who defeated him in a duel. After his defeat, he looked at Rai, but his brother just smiled as he looked down on him. Rian gets a second wind and he charges at Chiron. Chiron blocks his attack, but he notes that Rian's attacks are becoming unpredictable. Rian launches an attack from below and Chiron quickly strikes upwards. As a result, Rian gets disarmed and Chiron wins the duel. Having won against a noble, Chiron starts to worry that Rian will do something to harm him. But to his surprise, Rian humbly accepts defeat, and he tells Chiron that he can strike him down. Chiron exclaims that he only fought to survive and that he doesn't want to end the young master's life. They start arguing about who caused the mess. Chiron tells him that he felt very pressured going against the son of the family head. Apparently, Rian thought that challenging him to a duel was cool. Chiron sits on the floor and Rian finds the situation strange. He thought that Chiron was just like his brother Rai, who would laugh at him every time he loses. Rian finds Chiron interesting, so he asks for his name. Chiron introduces himself, and Rian responds with his full name. After that, Rian helps him up, wanting to become friends. Time passes and we see Chiron back in the library. Temurin compliments him on his performance. He has completed many history books and he is satisfied with his progress. Chiron looks back at his duel with Rian, thinking about how it made his spirit zone better. More importantly, Rian is his friend now. He learns that Rian is actually a good person, but he has his issues. Rian goes to the library to study, but he's too bored to even get started, so Chiron pushes him to study. He knows that Rian is not a lazy guy, but he really needs a trigger to get him started with something. Rian asks Chiron about his plan to become a mage by reading many books. Chiron tells him that he didn't get a chance to study before, so he still has a long way to go. He starts reading in front of Rian, and he impresses the young master with his reading speed. Rian reads the introduction of the book. The book questions the reader about who would win between a mage and a swordsman. But Rian gives up after reading the introduction, so Chiron starts reading the book wanting to know the answer. Out of nowhere, Rai arrives and tells them the swordsman would win. Rai grabs the book, and the two get nervous thinking he may have overheard their discussion. It is then revealed that butlers can't have normal conversations with nobles. Rian asks his brother why the swordsman would win. Rai tells him that they can find the answer by looking at the location of the swordsman and mage on the land. Rian questions why the location would even matter. But Rai ignores him and calls out to Chiron wanting to know his answer. Chiron responds that the mage would win if the swordsman steps into his range, but the swordsman can win if he attacks the mage before the mage can cast a spell. However, Rai rejects his answer, stating that the mage will always lose. After that, he asks Chiron about the 5 godly generals' armor, an anti-magic artifact that disrupts the spirit zone. He goes on to explain that without the spirit zone, a mage can't use magic, so he will be totally defenseless. However, the equipment is extremely expensive. Rai adds that the problem is that a mage came up with anti-magic, and the mage did it for profit. So Rai concludes that mages are pathetic because they sell their own weaknesses for money. Surprisingly, Chiron tells him that mages are like that. He explains to Rai that anti-magic has some beneficial uses and it isn't really that bad. Rai gets stunned and Rian starts laughing at him. After that, Rai walks out insisting that a mage still can't win against the swordsman. Rian is happy about what Chiron did, so he compliments him and tells him that he is the best. 6 months later, we see Temurin signing a status report. They are about to send Chiron away, thinking it is a shame because he is very useful. Meanwhile, Chiron finishes reading his last book. Rian goes over to him and congratulates him. Chiron requests to see Rian's house before leaving. Rian gets surprised because Chiron has been hiding their friendship for a year. But Chiron tells him that he wants to see how Rian is living before he leaves. Rian accepts his request, and they head over to his house while the other family members are out. They go to Rian's room and it has a lot of training equipment. While there, they play card games and Rian keeps on losing. He accuses Chiron of cheating with the spirit zone, but Chiron denies it. Chiron explains that he is just being observant so he can tell Rian's intentions. He looks around and sees a novel. Chiron asks Rian if he can read it, but Rian falls asleep. Suddenly, he hears the sound of a piano. He knows that Rian's older sister, Reina Ogent, is the only pianist in the house. Chiron heads there, and he gets caught by Reina. He remembers that Rian warned him about Reina's personality, so he's very careful around her. She asks him if he can play the piano, but he tells her that he can't. After hearing this, she asks Chiron to sit beside her so that she can teach him how to play the piano. Chiron reluctantly obeys. She teaches him how to play the piano, and he tries playing it. Reina notes that he is playing the piece wrong, but it sounds similar to what she taught him. Chiron uses the spirit zone while playing. Slowly, the sound is getting more and more accurate. She is impressed by his performance. Suddenly, Rian shouts at them, complaining about the noise. He is surprised to see Chiron with his sister. Rian casually tells Reina that Chiron is his friend. Chiron acts dumb, but Rian assures him that his sister won't do anything to harm him. Apparently, Reina doesn't care if he's a commoner. Chiron tells Rian that his sister is actually a good and kind person. But he warns Chiron that Reina will devour him. Reina thinks Chiron is cute and Rian teases him. Suddenly, Reina grabs Rian by the collar and starts hurting him. Chiron is confused. After that, Rian asks his sister why she's home. His sister tells him that Rai is going to be taking the swordsman qualification exam and she's there to fetch him. The official qualification certificate is recognized by the whole continent. The exam only takes place once a year and, although over 1,000 people attend, only around 30 people would get the official certification. On the other hand, unofficial qualification certifications are given to graduates of special organizations. Rian gets jealous thinking that Rai will be taking such an incredible exam at the age of 18. Reina cheers him up as she heads off to prepare dinner. After she leaves, Chiron asks Rian if his sister has a boyfriend. Rian smiles and then runs as he calls out to Reina. He goes outside and screams that Chiron is asking if Reina has a boyfriend. Reina and the maids hear this. Chiron catches up to him and covers his mouth. Reina and the maids brush it off, but the head butler, Louis, watches them from a corner. He states that the name Chiron sounds familiar, so he wants to talk to Temirin. Later, we see Rian training with his master. During a break, his master notices that Rian is motivated, but the problem is schema. At that moment, someone runs to him telling him that Chiron is in danger because Louis gave a report to the family patriarch, Bishop Ogent, and it is related to Rian. So he immediately sets off to talk to his father. But his master doesn't allow him to leave. Meanwhile, Chiron kneels before Bishop and he gets sentenced to death. It is then revealed that the head butler Louis gave him a report about how badly he treated Rian. Chiron asks him what would happen to Rian if they are friends. Bishop tells him that he is stupid and that nothing will happen to Rian. Chiron lets out a sigh of relief and admits that he is friends with Rian. After hearing this, Bishop calls out to the head butler. He orders Louis to deal with Chiron quickly and keep the issue a secret. Reina tries to save him, but his father wouldn't listen to her. They are about to take Chiron away when, suddenly, Rian arrives. He tells his father that Chiron doesn't deserve to die, but his father tells him that things are too complicated for him to understand. But Rian doesn't want his friend to die. His father tells him that his friendship with Chiron is fake and that the commoner just wants to take advantage of him. He asks for proof that Chiron is his friend. But Rian can't show him any proof. He remembers his card game with Chiron where his friend taught him to observe things as a whole. Thinking this is the real deal, Rian holds onto his sword. 30 minutes earlier, Rian was asking his master to let him go. His master explained to him that nobles will wipe out anything that threatens the family's status. So he was wrong to befriend Chiron. But Rian doesn't want to be a coward. His master saw the look in his eyes and he could tell that his student was determined. So he gives his student a sword and lets him go. Back to the present, Rian tells his father that he believes that he is Chiron's friend while holding onto his sword. His father gets angry and he threatens to disown Rian. But Rian tells him that he will gladly be disowned if it means saving Chiron. Bishop tells him to take out his sword and Rian does so immediately. His father exclaims that he is not on the same level as Chiron. However, Rian disagrees. He tells his father that Chiron is above his level and he wants Chiron to go even higher. His father calls him delusional. At that moment, Chiron speaks up. Rian tells his friend to let him handle it, but Chiron insists on helping him out. Chiron tells Rian that he won't regret being friends with him even if he dies. Rian cries and tells his father that he will still be friends with Chiron no matter what happens. The commoners in the room cry upon hearing this. Suddenly, their grandfather, Clump, appears. Clump is the former patriarch. He asks for everyone's opinion regarding the issue. Reina speaks in favor of Chiron, stating that there is no dishonor in their family. Rai is the next to give his opinion. His father expects him to speak against Chiron. But he just tells his father that he doesn't like Chiron without giving his opinion about the matter. Up next is Temirin. Before he speaks, Louis reminds him that they should side with the master. But he speaks in favor of Chiron, stating that he did his job well. It seems that only Bishop wants to punish Chiron. However, the grandfather suddenly speaks up. He tells them that the friendship needs to end because it will ruin the family's image. Clump asks Chiron to let Rian go. But Chiron refuses to do so, surprising everyone. Rian feels ashamed because he just wanted Chiron to survive even if it meant ending their friendship. So he takes his sword and thrusts it into the ground. While kneeling, he swears to become the sword of Chiron, making Bishop very angry. A knight's oath is a promise to live on as their master's sword in exchange for a noble status. A noble would look bad if he denies a knight's oath. Everyone gets shocked by Rian's actions. At that moment, Clump asks Rian about Chiron's qualifications. But Rian replies that a sword does not judge and it only protects. This makes his grandfather laugh. Clump approaches Chiron and tells him to take care of Rian. Chiron thanks him for his permission. After that, Clump orders Louis to bring them Chiron's parents. Later, we see Rian laughing in his room. Chiron tells him that he didn't have to do the knight's oath. Rian replies that he did it because his friend has the power to pull people in. But Chiron tells him that he's all talk and he needs to try harder to protect him. This hurts Rian. Reina arrives asking if Rian really lost to Chiron. Rian tells her to get out, but Chiron lets her in. She tells them that the family is a mess because of what Rian did. She adds that Chiron and Rian will be enrolled in a swordsmanship academy. This shocks Chiron, but Reina explains that he is part of the family now. Rian doesn't want to go to the academy, but his sister kicks him down. He tells Reina about how Chiron is an aspiring mage that already has access to the spirit zone. This makes Reina think that Rian is pathetic because he lost to an aspiring mage in a duel with the sword. Reina learns about how Chiron used the spirit zone to win against Rian. She thinks he's impressive, so she's going to tell their grandfather about Chiron's path. Reina explains that Rian will have to go to the swordsmanship academy if Chiron will become a mage. Rai asks about his masters and he learns that he already left. After that, a butler informs Chiron that his family has arrived. He rushes to meet them. Chiron enters the reception room and he meets his parents. He hugs them and he notices that they lost weight. But they still tell him that they were doing great and eating well. Vincent wants to know why his son called them. So Chiron tells them about what happened. Vincent thinks that his son is now delusional because he went through a lot of suffering. At that moment, Bishop arrives with Reina and Rian. They introduce themselves to Chiron's parents. They get shocked and they bow their heads while introducing themselves. Vincent now realizes that his son is not delusional. He thinks it's unbelievable. They become a part of the royal family, and they are surprised by the treatment they are getting. Vincent nervously tells Bishop Ogent that he finds the recent events hard to believe. Bishop states that he also has an unpleasant feeling. But he would be dirtying Rian's name if he expresses discomfort just because they're commoners. So he will continue to address them properly and support Chiron. Bishop reveals to everyone that Chiron is a spirit zone user and he has the talent to become a mage. So they will send him to Alpia's academy so that he can get the unofficial qualification certificate. Bishop tells Vincent that his son is going to become a mage when he graduates from the academy. But the problem is class. Commoners aren't allowed in the magic academy, so they decide to adopt Chiron. He assures them that they won't take Chiron and that the adoption is just for the documents. This will make Chiron a noble, but Vincent can't help but think that they are taking his son away. Chiron holds his father's hand and he tells everyone that he does not want to get adopted. He adds that he'd rather live as a commoner if he must change fathers. Clump gets upset and calls Chiron stubborn. Chiron tells him that he doesn't want to leave his parents because they raised him and gave him infinite opportunities. Suddenly, Vincent begs Clump to adopt Chiron. He confesses that Chiron isn't his biological son. Bishop, noticing the difference in appearance between Chiron and his supposed parents, confronted Vincent about it. Chiron, already aware of the truth, shouted at Vincent and expressed his fear of being abandoned once again. Overwhelmed with emotion, Vincent embraced Chiron and offered a sincere apology. Witnessing his son Rian in tears, Bishop asked his father to inquire about Chiron's admission to Alphia's academy, which had a special enrollment process. Although Clump expressed concerns about approaching Alphia's, Bishop reminded him of a debt they owed, prompting Clump to decide on a reckless course of action. 3 days later, Rian tearfully expressed his sorrow at parting ways with Chiron, urging him to become a mage while pledging to become the strongest knight to protect him. Reina intervened by punching Rian and insisting that he should graduate first. Reina assured Chiron that their grandfather would ensure his attendance at the Magic Academy, and regarded him as a caring and resilient younger brother. Finally, she wished him good luck. With Rian, Reina, and Rai boarding a carriage bound for the capital, Chiron and his family prepared to return to their home. Rian shouted, encouraging Chiron to surpass everyone in the Magic Academy, to which Chiron responded with the same request. Meanwhile, Clump met with Alphias and provided a description of Chiron, mentioning his resemblance to Alphias during his younger years. Alphias expressed confidence in admitting Chiron, but Clump informed him that Chiron was not of noble lineage. Alphias then inquired if they were referring to the child with blonde hair and blue eyes. Clump explained to Alphias about their attempt to adopt Chiron in the past. Alphias understood Chiron's way of thinking, which Clump believed was similar to Alphia's own thinking. However, Alphias expressed concern, stating that such thinking could be dangerous. Clump urged Alphias to forgive himself for past events. Alphias revealed that he had taken up teaching magic to children to prevent someone like himself from emerging. Clump informed him that fate had brought back the child he had once driven away, and Alphias ultimately decided to accept Chiron. 3 months later, Chiron, now 17 years old, bid farewell to his loving parents. Temurin arrived to accompany Chiron to the academy. After hours of travel, they reached the academy, and Chiron expressed gratitude to Temurin for everything. Temurin cautioned him, saying that even a talented commoner would still be considered a commoner. However, Chiron was encouraged to persevere and make the most of the opportunity provided by the academy. They entered the academy building, and Temurin left Chiron's side. Soon after, Alpheus arrived, and they recognized each other. Alpheus instructed Chiron to prepare for an unexpected test, feeling regretful that he had not been able to teach Chiron earlier. Alpheus then showed Chiron around the academy. They visited the beginner class, where children were practicing various types of magic. They proceeded to the high-rank class, where teenagers engaged in discussions on complex subjects and performed more advanced magical experiments. Chiron felt like he had entered a completely different world. At that moment, they walked past a familiar red-haired girl, who caught their attention. Chiron stumbled upon a notice board that displayed the names of the top-performing students and their aspirations. Upon glancing at it, he felt a desire to challenge them. Suddenly, a voice called out the name of the highest-ranking student from the advanced class, Carmiss Amy. Chiron turned his gaze in her direction and immediately recognized her from their past encounters. In return, Amy looked back at him, and Serial caught up to her. Chiron hoped fervently that he would go unnoticed. However, Amy's friend became infatuated with Chiron. Amy mentioned that he seemed familiar, leading Serial to assume that Amy was now interested in boys. Carmiss Amy was renowned for rejecting all suitors, and now, someone who knew her dark past was joining the academy. Alpheus and Chiron arrived at the testing center, where children underwent evaluations of their spirit zones. These assessments determined their class assignments based on their ability to manipulate the spirit zone. Alpheus advised Chiron to truthfully answer all the questions. When Chiron's turn arrived, he stepped into his spirit zone. The evaluators asked him to state the farthest number he could see, but Chiron chose to remain silent. Alpheus urged him to be honest, so he confessed that he could indeed perceive a number, but it was excessively long, making it unreadable. Furthermore, the number kept growing longer as time passed. Chiron examined the number in front of him and decided to truncate it to 3.14. However, the teachers insisted that they hadn't set that particular number. Chiron persisted in his claim, prompting one of the teachers to realize that he might have exceeded their preset limit of 30 meters. Moreover, Chiron stated that he could perceive the color blue, which was deemed impossible for someone with a large spirit zone. Alpheus finally understood why Clump had recommended Chiron. He realized that Chiron possessed an extraordinary and abnormal talent. To make matters more concerning, Chiron also claimed to sense and see 867 balls within his zone, leaving the teachers utterly astonished. Alpheus perceived this revelation as potentially dangerous. His overall assessment is written down, and he is asked to wait outside while they discuss what to do with Chiron. They have a debate about which class to assign him to because Chiron's assessment shows he has advanced skills but lacks the basics. Eventually, they decide to place him in Class 7. The classes are divided into different levels: basic classes for classes 10 to 8, advanced classes for classes 7 to 4, and graduating classes for classes 3 to 1. The following day, Chiron introduces himself to his new classmates in Class 7, and they become excited to have a new student. The lessons are challenging, but Chiron is determined to catch up somehow. The history books he read previously proved to be helpful in his studies. In the afternoon, the classes participate in combined training for the advanced level. On the training grounds, Amy remains as popular as ever, and Chiron tries his best to avoid her. Romiatella, an instructor specializing in the advanced spirit zone, takes charge of the class. She mentions that a new student will be joining them that day. Chiron introduces himself, and everyone enthusiastically greets him. Serial becomes particularly excited, while Amy has a moment of realization. She recalls her troubled past and cannot help but express her frustration and anger through a swear word. Her classmates overheard her and were taken aback by what they heard. Amy was unable to believe that she was going to meet him again. She felt ashamed and embarrassed about her past actions. She envisioned Chiron spreading the word about how Amy had commanded gangsters and even stripped him of his clothes. Amy knew she had to take action regarding Chiron, who was feeling uneasy about the situation. At that moment, Itella stood in the image zone and explained the practicality of the spirit zone in battles, along with its limitations. She also discussed the 4 different forms of the spirit zone: defense, attack, cross, and the detached form, which was the most challenging to maintain once it separated from the body. Suddenly, Itella asked Amy to demonstrate the cross form for combat. However, Amy was not keen on drawing any attention to herself at that particular moment. Amy executed the cross form with agility, swiftly demolishing the targets as she spun on her spot. Chiron, observing her performance, admired her graceful movements. Upon finishing, Amy glanced at Chiron, and to her embarrassment, she realized that everyone had witnessed her actions. Chiron trembled, and both individuals became certain that they recognized each other from the past. Amy devised a plan to silence Chiron about her previous experiences. Later, during the class, each student underwent individual training for the defensive form. Chiron pondered about the technique and successfully executed it. He approached Itella and requested the utilization of the image zone. The anticipation of witnessing Chiron's skills grew among the onlookers. He summoned his spirit zone, and its size surpassed the average limit. However, the expanded spirit zone ultimately collapsed due to its unfamiliar dimensions. Determined, Chiron resolved to stretch his spirit zone even further. To the astonishment of everyone, Chiron's spirit zone reached an impressive length of 41 meters. He skillfully controlled the zone, condensing it into a denser defensive form. Excitement filled the air, as both the instructor and the classmates anticipated his success, except for Amy. She believed that Chiron's progress would soon surpass her own, leading to her humiliation. She intended to take action regarding him. Itella praises Chiron's performance, and the other students congratulate him. He captures attention as a competitor, an object of admiration, a source of jealousy, and a menacing stare. The following day, Sienna Alifer elucidates that a magician transforms into a deity while inside their spirit zone. Through her explanations, Chiron comprehends why he is unable to utilize magic. He is attempting to possess unlimited power without acquiring all-encompassing knowledge. He realizes that he can become a magician. That afternoon, Chiron is forcefully taken to the nearby forest. Chiron becomes perplexed, and Amy threatens him that she intends to end his life. Amy became hesitant when she noticed Chiron's determined expression. He confirmed that he remembered her past. Amy clarified that there was a misunderstanding and she wasn't a promiscuous girl, which surprised Chiron. She further explained that it was the gangsters who wanted to humiliate him. Chiron now understood that Amy was worried about rumors spreading about her past. He advised her to simply apologize and emphasized that dwelling on the past would be futile. However, Amy misunderstood his intentions and believed that Chiron intended to act superior to her after the apology. She expressed her disadvantage, fearing that Chiron could still spread rumors even after she apologized. Amy then threatened him, implying the difficulties he would face in the academy. Chiron recognized this as her personality. Amy warned him that if he offended a senior, the other seniors and underclassmen in her class would turn against him, potentially leading to his expulsion. Chiron realized that Amy aimed to make him drop out to prevent rumors from spreading. Amy decided to test his trustworthiness and requested that Chiron bring her coffee every morning. With no other choice, Chiron agreed to be her messenger. Amy cautioned him not to report her to the teachers, threatening to harm him, and then left abruptly. The following morning, Chiron attracted attention as he delivered Amy's coffee. Amy smirked as she received the coffee and left Chiron embarrassed. She claimed that she was merely disciplining her junior, but deep down, she felt a sense of accomplishment. Chiron perceived this as bullying but remained steadfast and carried out his tasks. 10 days later, Chiron began to gather his own audience every morning and earned the nickname Academy's Romanticist. Rumors circulated that he had been confessing his feelings for 10 consecutive days. Amy encountered Chiron and noticed the growing crowd around him. She had believed that her bullying was effective, but Seriel asked Amy when she would accept Chiron. Seriel explained the current rumors, and Amy realized her mistake. While the audience cheered for Chiron, he delivered Amy's coffee. Chiron only wanted her to take it so he could go study, but Amy became flustered and blushed with confusion. The students cheered loudly when Chiron brought coffee to Amy. Amy, who realized what was happening, became angry and pushed the coffee away. She then acted like a girl who was being confessed to and completely rejected Chiron in front of everyone. Amy left, and Seriel asked her if she was worried about the rumors. The audience thought Chiron was heartbroken, but in reality, he was actually celebrating. That night, Amy felt depressed because she had started a rumor on her own. She had been saving all the pictures of Chiron delivering coffee using the Karmas family's red-eye device. At first, it was amusing for her, but for 9 days, Chiron didn't show any reaction, and his eyes didn't even move. Amy wondered how Chiron could hide his true feelings. Chiron seemed like someone who could control his emotions like a machine or someone who was genuinely sincere. Amy tried to go to bed, and Seriel asked if she was feeling unwell because she hadn't received Chiron's coffee. Her plan had failed, so now she intended to rest. Just then, Jake Adrius confronted her. He claimed that he had heard about a poor kid who kept bothering her. Jake offered her a cup of high-quality coffee and said that he was also trying to court her. He stated that he was better than a poor kid like Chiron. Amy looked disgusted and told him to stop joking around. Amy knew that Jake's research group was trying to undermine her. Jake denied it and told her not to disrespect him because it was the same as disrespecting his family. Amy then called him pathetic. She further stated that their strange research group only bullied other children and had no honor whatsoever. Jake became offended and furious. He claimed that his family had enough power to eliminate a family like the Karmas. Amy laughed at Jake, realizing that he had cowardly eyes, unlike Chiron. This comparison angered Jake even more. He admitted that he had done things in the wrong order and should have dealt with Chiron first. Amy flinched and broke the cup of coffee. Jake became angry and found himself trapped in Amy's spirit zone. Amy ominously asked Jake what he was trying to achieve. Jake reminded Amy about the school policy, and Amy laughed, calling Jake a coward who relied on his family's influence. Jake realized he was in a difficult situation and had no choice but to flee. Amy couldn't believe she had gotten so worked up over Chiron being falsely accused. She just wanted to clear her head. Several days had passed since Chiron felt relieved that Amy's bullying had come to an end. However, his tranquility was interrupted when he noticed Seriel in a state of panic. Concerned, Chiron approached her, causing Seriel to become even more anxious. She questioned his presence and urgently asked about Amy. In a rush, she thrust a letter into Chiron's face, revealing that some students had apparently taken him captive. Just half an hour earlier, a male student had attempted to deliver a letter to Amy, only to be ignored. The student expressed concern for Chiron's safety. Amy snatched the letter from him and read its contents, declaring her indifference. Seriel grew worried and suggested informing a professor. However, Amy feared that the school authorities would thoroughly investigate the matter, potentially uncovering their relationship and Chiron's lower social status. She recalled witnessing a young Chiron crawling on the ground, imagining the past in the present moment. Amy flinched and handed her bag over to Seriel, asserting that Jake's group posed no threat to her before departing. Chiron found it hard to believe that someone as wicked as Amy would now be the one to save him. Overwhelmed by panic, Chiron contemplated his next move, but Seriel urged him to wait as instructed by Amy. Chiron understood the reason behind Amy's reluctance to involve the professors. He confided in Seriel, expressing his intention to follow her lead. Chiron devised a plan to escape, yet Seriel swiftly intervened, grasping hold of him. She informed him that they would utilize photonization, and suddenly they teleported to a secluded forest. Descending from their airborne position, they scoured the area but found no sign of anyone. Chiron speculated that Amy had been taken to an even more remote location. Realizing the urgency of the situation, Chiron instructed Seriel to inform the professors while admitting that he was the cause of this incident. Seriel became frantic and questioned whether the rumors about their secret relationship were true. Chiron urged her to leave immediately, letting out a sigh before expanding his spiritual senses. In doing so, he detected some traces and heard an explosion nearby. The explosion happened because a student threatened Amy. At that moment, more students arrived, and Jake appeared. Jake couldn't believe that Amy came to help Chiron. Amy asked where Chiron was, and everyone laughed and said that Chiron was probably in the library. They had called Amy out as a form of revenge. Amy was relieved that Chiron wasn't there. She smiled and confidently declared that she would take care of them. Jake suddenly felt afraid. Without warning, Amy launched an attack, causing flames to burn some of the students. Jake instructed them to scatter because the cross formation was weak in battle. Unfortunately, some of them were hit and fell down. Amy asked where they thought they were going, and she locked onto everyone, launching attacks in all directions. Amy was able to switch her tactics quickly. Jake couldn't believe what he was seeing. It was different from what he had witnessed in class. He positioned himself above Amy, knowing it was the blind spot of the cross formation. He cast a magic spell, but Amy effortlessly dodged it. Jake was shocked, and Amy laughed at him. She retaliated and shot Jake down. Although he landed with a protective barrier, Amy continued to rain magic attacks upon him. Amy taunted him, calling him pathetic. Suddenly, Amy's magic was interrupted, and she began experiencing intense headaches as she found herself surrounded. Jake stated that it was checkmate. His group was using anti-magic techniques to suppress Amy. Amy accused him of being a coward for resorting to forbidden magic. Jake then used wind magic to bind Amy, making it impossible for her to escape. Amy struggled but couldn't break free. Jake pulled out a knife and threatened to mark Amy's face. Excitedly, he demanded that she beg for her life. At that moment, Amy realized that this was how Chiron must have felt when they were kids. Just as things seemed hopeless, someone shouted at them to stop. Amy looked to the side and saw Chiron. Chiron appeared unexpectedly, surprising everyone. Jake's group found it amusing to see Amy's prince all alone. Chiron devised a plan to buy some time and urged them to release Amy. With determination, he rushed forward, only to find them standing idle. Suddenly, Chiron experienced the debilitating effects of anti-magic, causing him immense pain, and he collapsed to the ground. This provoked laughter from everyone, while Amy instructed them to eliminate Chiron's spirit zone. The sensation of losing his senses and his mind breaking apart overwhelmed Chiron. He recalled a previous conversation about a defensive technique capable of nullifying mental attacks. Despite the agony caused by the anti-magic, Chiron endeavored to endure it, while Jake's group intensified their efforts. Amy urged him to surrender, but then they witnessed Chiron's defensive form neutralizing the anti-magic. Determined, Chiron continued to reinforce his defense form, causing Jake's group to become flustered. Rising to his feet, Chiron advanced towards them, and the anti-magic began reflecting back at the group, affecting them as well. Amy, finally freed from the windbind, was astonished to discover the existence of a chilling and impenetrable spirit zone. In disbelief that they were outnumbered, Jake accused Chiron of specializing in anti-magic, which explained his special recommendation. Jake proclaimed his determination not to lose in a battle and focused his attention on Chiron. He conjured his wind magic, but before he could cast it, Amy delivered a powerful punch to him. Amy continued to pummel Jake mercilessly, prompting Chiron to intervene and try to calm her down. Poor Jake endured a severe beating, and Chiron managed to lift Amy, but both of them tumbled to the ground, resulting in Amy losing consciousness atop Chiron. Chiron was startled when he saw Amy losing consciousness while she was on top of him. He felt flustered and thanked Amy for coming to his aid. However, Amy flinched and quickly got up, hitting Chiron in the process. She called him weak, causing Chiron to believe that she didn't have any positive qualities. Despite this, Amy helped Chiron stand so they could escape without the professors finding out. Chiron informed her that he had asked Seriel to inform the professors. Amy's head started to ache, and she asked Chiron about the possibility of their secret being revealed. Unbeknownst to them, Jake overheard their conversation just as they were planning to flee. Suddenly, Professor Thad and Professor Sienna arrived, accompanied by Seriel, who immediately checked on Amy. Thad illuminated the area and discovered the unconscious students. He questioned Amy, wondering why such an excellent student like her would end up in that situation. Sienna, on the other hand, found Chiron's behavior suspicious and directed her inquiry towards him. It was at that moment that Jake appeared and offered to explain everything. He claimed that they had engaged in a duel. However, Sienna had already found a piece of evidence indicating their use of anti-magic, which Jake dismissed as a mere countermeasure. According to his version of events, Amy had attacked them first, and they had requested a duel in self-defense. Amy called Jake crazy for kidnapping Chiron, but nothing had actually happened to him. Jake accused Amy and Chiron of hiding something because they hadn't initially informed the professors. He threatened to expose their secret and intended to exploit it along with his wealth. Sienna intervened, silencing Jake, and reiterated that they had violated school policy. She emphasized that the use of anti-magic could lead to severe mental harm and loss of control. Sienna believed this to be sufficient grounds for expulsion. Jake scoffed at the idea of a mere professor threatening him, reminding Thad that his family sponsored the school. However, Sienna remained steadfast in her role as an instructor. Jake laughed and threatened Sienna and her position as a teacher. In response, Sienna attacked Jake with ice magic, prompting Thad to remind her not to harm a student fatally. Jake found himself trapped within ice and ice spikes. Chiron was amazed by Sienna's mastery of her magic. Sienna warned Jake that money couldn't solve everything and dispelled her magic. She revealed that the school was already aware of the harm he had inflicted on numerous students, and this time, they wouldn't hold back in punishing him. Sienna declared that teachers imparted knowledge that couldn't be bought with money. She reminded Jake of his aspirations of becoming a mage and urged him not to cast aside those dreams. Realizing the gravity of his actions, Jake apologized to Sienna. Chiron also recalled what was truly important to him. Later, Amy and Chiron faced interrogation regarding their delay in reporting the incident to the teachers. Amy decided to tell the truth, knowing that they couldn't keep everything a secret indefinitely. To everyone's surprise, Amy confessed that Chiron was her boyfriend. The room was filled with astonishment at this revelation. Days later, Serial shares the story with the other students in a far-fetched way. As she continues to spread the story, Amy comes and finds out that her best friend is the one spreading the rumors. The students have mixed reactions to Amy and Chiron's dating rumors. Amy gets mad at Serial, but the latter is excited about this development. Serial claims this is better to keep other boys away, and Amy agrees. Days ago, that exclaimed that Amy doesn't have an interest in dating. However, Amy claims that she met Chiron when they were young. She then sweetly asks Chiron for a follow-up. Chiron worries, but Amy kicks her. Chiron then awkwardly confirms it. Amy finds this situation better than having their past exposed. Serial then reminds Amy that they will have an integrated class soon with Chiron's. She asks her if they will have a date after class, and Amy denies it. Amy is busy, and she is glad that Chiron is normally leading a normal school life. However, she realizes that this is not okay for her. During their integrated class, Serial calls out to Chiron and tries to tease the fake lovers. Amy is offended that Chiron looks like he doesn't want to be lovers with her. Amy then starts talking sweetly to Chiron, and Serial is shocked. However, Chiron tries to draw the line between a senior and a junior. Amy gets silent and turns around. Chiron goes to his seat and hears slanders around him, especially one about his inability to use magic. Chiron clenches his fist. The rumors that spread like wildfire become bad after everyone finds out that Chiron is a last placer in class. Some students claim Chiron has backing from his household and is trying to fish for a girl with a background. Everyone agrees and starts slandering the academy and Chiron. Chiron arrives in the classroom and notices how everyone acts. He doesn't want Amy to be affected, which is why he is trying to keep his distance. During practical class, Chiron can hear the thoughts of his classmates trying to stay away from him. Ithella approaches him and asks about his progress. Chiron claims he is having a hard time with the deviate form, and Ithella gives him advice. Chiron claims he doesn't have problems with his four forms. Ithella then tells him to practice it on the image zone. Chiron looks at the other students. Ithella wonders why Chiron is getting cautious around the other students. Chiron then agrees to do it and asks for Ithella's feedback. His classmates talk badly about Chiron as he steps into the image zone. However, Amy's class is excited about seeing Chiron's progress. Chiron starts with the defensive form, and Class 4 is impressed by it while making his classmates silent. Chiron quickly switches to other forms, and Ithella is impressed by his speed. Last is the deviate form, but Chiron has never been successful before. Class 5 sees him doing the deviant form and claims that Chiron must be on their level first. As Chiron works on it, he gets lightheaded. Just then, his own classmates start laughing and talking badly about him. Class 4 can see that his spirit zone is fluctuating. Chiron wonders why humans enjoy other people's failures. He recalls the depressing episodes he experienced. Just then, he hears his own voice reminding him that he is in school to become a mage. Chiron pulls himself together and strengthens his spirit zone again. Everyone is impressed except Chiron's classmates. Chiron then forces himself to complete the last form. Meanwhile, Sienna writes a report about the recent incident. She can't believe a student won against other students who were using anti-magic. She later learns from Ithella that Chiron was successful in doing the deviant form. She is impressed and claims she was not wrong about Chiron's talent. Days later, Sienna ends her lecture with Class 7 and calls Chiron. She informs him that he will advance to Class 5. His classmates wonder what kind of household is backing Chiron. Chiron's classmates started complaining about how Chiron skipped 2 classes when he doesn't know magic commands. Sienna asks if it is true. Chiron sweats as his classmates look at him ominously. He confirms that he can perform magic, but Sienna still believes that it is fine. Another student claims that this is discrimination and claims that the spirit zone is not everything. They continue pouring out complaints, and Sienna claims to talk about this in a meeting first. Sienna feels that there is something more to the class objections. Just then, a student named Maria approaches her to explain some things. Maria then starts speaking out about her classmates' bullying acts toward Chiron. Sienna thanks the crying Maria for the information. That night, Chiron is out late in the library studying. He leaves the library as he recalls Temurin's advice to endure everything until it comes to an end. Chiron wants to overcome everything for the sake of the people who believed in him. He swears to be a mage. After taking a bath, Chiron hears someone knocking on his door. He thinks it is one of his classmates, but it turns out to be Sienna. She comes into Chiron's room to talk about something. He now realizes why Chiron got strangely aligned scores. It is because he is trying to remember everything at once and studies for the present, not the future. She wonders why he didn't learn everything when he was younger. Chiron acts shy, and Sienna is surprised by Chiron's change in character outside class. Sienna then starts asking about the bullying, but Chiron claims that he is fine. She asks if he despises his classmates. Chiron confirms it and claims that he is human too. However, even if the whole class thinks wrong of him, he knows there are other people out there who understand him. Sienna nods in agreement. The faculty meeting comes, and Sienna presents her documents to the other professors. They can't believe that a whole class is bullying one student. A teacher suggests advancing Chiron quickly, and Sienna is relieved to hear that. However, Thad disagrees, and Alpheus asks for his reason. Thad points out Chiron's inability to use magic and agrees with the other students' complaints. He also finds Sienna's favor over Chiron an issue. He claims that favoring one genius will deprive the other students' will to study. Sienna exclaims that they shouldn't stand in the way of a genius' development. The two continue arguing, and the others are already tired of their bickering every day. Alpheus stops them and agrees that both sides have a point. Alpheus agrees with not favoring one student and suggests something instead. The next day, students flock over to the announcement board. An early advancement exam is announced for the whole class, and they can skip 2 classes. However, they need to perform teleportation. Class 7 students panic over it and conclude that they won't pass the test. Just then, Chiron appeared as the students moved aside and also saw the announcement. The rumors about Chiron spread quickly, and soon students from other classes were aware of the bullying Chiron was facing because of his relationship with Amy. Amy realized that Chiron was ignoring her on purpose because of the rumors, and this infuriated her. Sariel tried to calm Amy down and reminded her that Chiron didn't want to involve the person he loved in his problems. Amy stopped and started daydreaming. The two knew how difficult it was to learn teleportation, and Sariel suggested teaching Chiron how to do it. Amy reminded Sariel that they also had exams to study for, and she claimed that Chiron didn't deserve her if he couldn't do even that much for her. Late that night, Artsundra heroine Amy snuck into the boys' dorm and surprised Chiron at his window. Amy quickly pinned her boyfriend down, but that was just her imagination. She discovered instructor Sienna alone with Chiron in his room. The teacher was furious with Amy for sneaking into Chiron's room and couldn't believe the couple were meeting every night in secret. While wondering why Sienna was also there, Chiron served Amy some tea. However, Amy remembered her reason for meeting Chiron. Sienna calmed her down first. Chiron was perplexed as to how he had gotten himself into this situation. Amy began to complain about the exam, but Sienna insisted that the headmaster had a plan. Amy explained how dangerous teleportation is. According to their lessons, it uses the same concept as photonize, but faster than the speed of light. Basically, you need to turn your body into light. Sienna explained the different levels, and Chiron realized that it might cause some collisions. As the teacher and student talked, Amy wondered how the two had become close, knowing that Sienna was unfriendly. Amy interrupted the conversation to explain that the school had prepared a dangerous exam site in midair. Chiron realized that the students would have to race from one peak to another using teleportation. Sienna was not sure about the details, but she knew that there would be safety devices to prevent students from dying. Amy was worried that Chiron would be an easy target, and Chiron hated the thought of facing the whole class alone. Sienna apologized that she could not help Chiron more, but she offered to personally tutor him every day. Amy then offered to tutor Chiron herself, But Sienna was worried that it would interfere with her own promotion exam. Chiron was surprised. The advanced class is everyone's goal, and you can get fame and more knowledge. However, once you get in there, you kiss goodbye to your leisure school days because of the hellish training. Chiron wondered why Amy was in a hurry. He didn't know that he was the reason all along, since he was catching up too fast on Amy. However, Chiron misunderstood Amy's action and now sees her in a different light. Sienna insisted on teaching Chiron instead, but Amy doesn't want to lose. She then asked Chiron who he would choose as his teacher. Amy insisted on choosing her because she is his girlfriend. However, Chiron surprised them by confessing that he would do it on his own. Chiron doesn't want to bother anyone because of his own problem. While Amy was scolding him, Chiron claimed that he knew why Amy was aiming for the advanced class. He also asked Sienna to put some trust in him, and the teacher agreed. As Sienna told Chiron to approach her with any questions, she didn't forget to warn Amy about sneaking into Chiron's room. Amy let out a deep sigh and realized that she was now alone with Chiron. Amy then stood up to leave. As she leaves, she wonders why Chiron didn't get her involved and awkwardly wonders if it hurts Chiron's pride to depend on his girlfriend. Chiron did agree, and that caught Amy off guard. However, she misunderstood it, as Chiron claimed that Amy was her goal as a senior mage. Ever since he came to the academy, she has been Chiron's goal. Chiron also doesn't want to make things more awkward between them. Amy then recalled a scene she didn't want to remember. She then got mad at Chiron for making up reasons, calling her a senior. Amy then wears her robe and orders Chiron to stop calling her senior. Of course, Chiron was shocked to see the haughty brat trying to be chummy with him. He didn't hesitate to call Amy Amy without honorifics. Flustered, Amy looked back to Chiron, who claimed that he would catch up to her in no time. Amy smirked and warned Chiron that she would graduate during that time. Chiron wanted to do things alone from the start to keep the bully's attention on himself. The countdown for the teleportation now starts. The next day, other students couldn't believe students applied for the teleportation exam, where the application of omniscience and omnipotence parts are hard. They then see Chiron walking with a pile of books, mainly about photonization theories. Chiron can study the logic on his own, but the application is his problem. The environment is a factor in teleportation, and one must fine-tune the omnipotence part and do some calculations. Chiron tried to cheer himself up, but he knows that he is at a disadvantage since the others have learned magic since they were kids. He wonders if he can close that gap. Just then, he realized something. The headmaster had given him the answer already. Meanwhile, another student is training in teleportation, with great results. His butler commended him for being the son of Sir Slider, the advisor for the Magic Association. Mark claimed that it was because he had a great tutor and that it was simple. The butler claimed it is impossible to master teleportation in a month, but learning the required portion for the exam will help Mark finish the course. Mark is confident since he has already advanced 2 levels. He then wondered what Chiron was doing and learned that our protagonist was only reading books. Mark thought Chiron would use his connections. He asked his butler to continue monitoring Chiron and claimed that Chiron wouldn't pass the exam by just reading books. Chiron put down his pen as he realized that he had the essential theories drilled into his mind. That night, Chiron went to Class 7's training grounds. He hopes things will work out as he planned. He then starts by grafting the photonization theory into his spirit zone. He knew the person blocking the path between omniscience and omnipotence was none other than himself. He planned to remove himself in between. Just then, the magic activates, and Chiron's body glows. He must use teleportation now, but he recalled that no human can calculate the speed of light. He then recalled the headmaster's words that a skilled mage can sense almost everything around him. That is what they call the extremely sensitive mindset, spirit zone. In that way, a mage can control the phenomena around him. Don't calculate the values. Sense everything all at once. Chiron then glows brighter than ever and activates teleportation. There are only 9 days before the exam, and students noticed how beaten up Chiron is. Chiron's attempts at teleportation so far have all been failures. 8 days remain, and Chiron is still trying to calculate things. More days passed by, and he kept failing, but he made sure that his body remembered the feeling. 1 more day is left, and Chiron has kept getting errors on top of errors for the past few days. He suddenly had an anxiety attack, and he slapped himself to calm down. He tries teleportation once more with a shout, An array of light travels through the training grounds. Chiron suddenly stops and falls flat to the ground. He finally did it, but he worries that he can't get far. He wanted to practice more, but the tiredness made him fall unconscious. The morning comes, and another exam taker, Mark, is ready to advance his class. He later approached Maria, wondering if she had given up on the exam. Maria tries to escape after wishing Mark luck, but Mark mentions how Maria snitched on a teacher. Maria got flustered, but Mark was only trying to see her reactions. Seeing that it was true, Mark then threatened Maria to watch her back once he became a senior. Maria's expression darkens. Mark can't believe someone like Maria wanted to be a mage. Mark leaves laughing, leaving the scared Maria on the floor. Mark then meets his crew, who planned to attack Chiron during the exam. Mark wanted to end Chiron's exam in a few turns and assured everyone that he would do as he promised everyone, a private tutor for each one of them. His father is from the Magic Association, so he should be able to pull some strings for them. Students then flock to the examination site. There are a lot of observers, especially the boys from Class 5 who wanted a cute girl to advance to their class. The headmaster is also present for the exam as a judge. A bright light suddenly appears, indicating the start of the exam. The exam makes me nervous. Why? They claim that there is a bridge for the exam, but the bridge is only composed of ropes. Meanwhile, Serial found the best spot to watch with Amy. Amy claims it is useless to watch a lower class exam, but she is dead worried for Chiron. On the other hand, Mark received a report that Chiron was missing. Speaking of the devil, Chiron just woke up after being unconscious on the training grounds. Amy panicked as she kept looking for her boyfriend. She then realized that Chiron had messed up with his self-study. The exam takers gather in front of the cliff, and the rule is simple: the person who can teleport the farthest wins. Everyone is scared since they know they won't be able to reach the other side, and there is no choice but to fall down afterward. Another teacher suggests giving up if they are scared and reminds them that being in the academy means risking one's life to study as a mage. He asks them to turn back if they don't have the resolution yet. He is doing his best to scare everyone to prevent unnecessary accidents. However, he can see a group that is raring to fight others in their way. Seeing that Chiron is not present, Mark thinks that Chiron failed his self-study. Ithella then announces the start of the exam. Just then, she notices someone running through the woods. Chiron runs with all of his might and apologizes while wondering if he can still partake in the exam. The girlfriend is enraged that her boyfriend arrived just now. Seeing Chiron's injuries, she worries that he had been practicing without safety equipment. Sienna reported to the headmaster that Ithella asked to delay the exam since a student was late. However, the headmaster wants the test to begin as scheduled. Ithella then officially announced the test with a signal and advised Chiron to give up if he couldn't move forward. Another student leads Chiron in his position. Chiron got in between Mark's lackeys, who planned to attack him. Chiron tries to focus as Ithella starts the race's countdown. The timer is ready, and the students are prepared to go. Chiron looks forward, and the race begins. Everyone shouts at the top of their lungs while running. Two students immediately sandwich Chiron and plan to attack him. Students do their best to get in front of everyone else. Mark laughs at them since being in front won't guarantee their win. What is important is getting your timing right and pulling teleportation turns as much as you can. The leading student is almost at the edge of the cliff and has used photon eyes. He goes off, and the others in front follow him. The others only reached 3 meters and failed to go on. Mark got anxious that his guards were now down. As he got near the cliff, he anxiously wondered what would happen if he failed. He then used photon eyes upon reaching the edge. Meanwhile, Mark's remaining lackeys can't believe Chiron is still running despite being in tatters. Only the 3 of them are left as they get near the edge. The 2 lackeys didn't have a choice but to use photon eyes and leave Chiron alone. Chiron is trying to find the perfect timing. He put strength into his last step, and the onlookers watched him jump off the cliff without using photon eyes. Damn, this is the longest 4 seconds ever. In a flashback, Rian commented on how brave Chiron was in front of his father. He wondered how Chiron couldn't feel fear. Chiron claimed that fear is just based on imagination. Based on the book that he had read, imagination shapes what will happen in the future. When you jump off a cliff, you won't face death until you hit the ground. That's why you need to focus on the present, and you will be able to see the solution. Ryan called Chiron stupid and made it clear that a person dies once they fall off a cliff. Back to the present, everyone can see Chiron pulling off a stupid stunt. While in midair, he activates photon eyes, and he tries his best to stay conscious so his spirit zone won't break. For a millisecond, he successfully uses photon eyes and passes by everyone in the front pack. Everyone got startled, including Mark, who wondered how late Chiron jumped off the cliff. The audience cheers as they see the exam takers using photon eyes from a distance. However, the keen eyes of Class 5 notice Chiron's dangerous move. Depending on what she can see, Amy knows that Chiron can be first if he is consistent with his routine. Mark curses as he continues doing his photon eyes turns. Chiron passes by him again, and everyone cheers from afar. Meanwhile, Maria walks in the nearby woods as she recalls being berated for having bad grades. She didn't like competitions in the first place, but she also hated being bullied. She can have Mark promoted before her. After the third turn, the exam takers are divided into 3 groups. The front group led by Chiron and Mark, the middle group, which is 3 meters behind the first group, and the last group, which used magic the earliest because they were scared. Everyone in the last group lost their magic and fell while shouting that they gave up on the exam. The judges can't help but laugh as they score the students. The failed students continued falling to their deaths until a safety device was activated and saved them with wind magic. They can't believe the instructors and upperclassmen were bullying them all along. At 200 meters, students from the middle group start falling like flies. Mark continued moving forward and called the others stupid for trying. His only problem right now is Chiron, who keeps putting distance between them. He can't believe a person who looked dead before the exam started is not getting tired during the race at all. Just then, Chiron created more distance with 1 photon. Ethela commented on how talented Chiron is. She noticed how Chiron kept using compulsion repeatedly, like a precise machine. The judges also noticed how Mark's routine was destabilizing since he was rushing himself is bound to fall soon. Headmaster Alpheus sits there silently, smiling while watching. Sariel wondered how Chiron learned an advanced skill like compulsion. Amy watches with seriousness, and wonders how Chiron does it differently from the norm of converting subconsciousness to consciousness. She knows that it is something that can't be learned. Mark could already feel his limits and ordered his lackeys to start their plan. The 2 lackeys are worried that it will be obvious now since there are only fewer of them to watch. One of the lackeys decided to use his remaining mental power and quickly made small turns using photon eyes. Chiron sensed that someone had broken their routine based on the noise. He suddenly noticed someone in front of him, blocking his way. He got startled as his routine got disrupted and used photon eyes in a different direction. Thinking about his future, the student can only feel apologetic as he tried to charge toward Chiron. Chiron realized that he was being targeted on purpose. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe. If you want to see a part 5 of this recap, let us know in the comments section below. Till next time.